This has been a massive engineering project for us to expand that use. Flare is in a bizarre position, a wonderful position, so to speak. We can have a vast launch with, suddenly this wall of applications coming to the network, large amounts of transactions coming to the network. And so everything is just 10 times, 100 times bigger than our expectations when we started this out. Pretty much the largest distribution of tokens taking place for a very, very long time. We're not just distributing to a few people. Then you think that there may be between 3.5 and 7 million potential token holders. So it's potentially a really large distribution, and whereby we probably are one of the most publicized launches probably ever, with one of the largest user bases probably ever, being highly decentralized and having an extremely wide token distribution. But we also need to make sure that it goes extremely smoothly, because we have, as a community and as a development house, we have this amazing opportunity. And the opportunity is that we can create one of the largest networks that's ever been built. But in order to do that, it has to be stable, it has to be secure, it has to be perfect.
We can have a vast launch with, suddenly this wall of applications coming to the network, large amounts of transactions coming to the network. And so everything is just 10 times, 100 times bigger than our expectations when we started this out.
Absolutely everything else that we're building follows from this set of things. An L1 with the EVM, the FTSO, and the state connector. And it's fast.
In some ways, as this kind of universal connector, this universal API.
If you look at Flare standing back, it's just this network that can come to consensus over the state of other blockchains. And I think insurance is probably one of the biggest applications of that. And you can almost picture Flare as an insurance protocol for blockchain. It's just that insurance is being used to enable really useful functionality.
So I think one of the most powerful examples of how Flare could be used, when it's fully articulated, is actually to bridge the Web 2 and the Web 3 worlds, the Web 2 data, the Web 2 kind of functionality into Web 3. And
ideally Flare is kind of the great connector.
That's exactly what we think.
Well, bridging of assets, and as you said, bridging Web 2 to Web 3 is going to be very powerful.
This has been a massive engineering project for us to expand that use. So it has taken us longer. It's also meant we've had to do a lot more audits, and audits take a very long time to schedule. Being highly decentralized and having an extremely wide token distribution. A lot of things have changed about the Flare project since we kind of put the white paper out in 2020. When we put that white paper out, we were almost a very simple project that was just trying to provide a smart contract platform for some non-smart contract tokens. We've expanded that vision very dramatically.
We've expanded that vision very dramatically.
But, into those 4 pillars of bridging,
yes,
composability and relay, Web 2 to Web 3 composability,
and then constellation of multi-chains.
This has been a massive engineering project for us to expand that use. But, into those 4 pillars of bridging,
yes,
composability and relay, Web 2 to Web 3 composability, and then constellation of multi-chains. In some ways you can think of Flare as a layer 1. In some ways you can think of Flare as almost a unique interoperability-based blockchain in order to enable interoperability across many different chains. Is what it's actually doing is it's trying to de-risk the user experience, both from, say, bridging and from relay. So in a lot of issues in bridging recently. There's been more than $1.5 billion of losses in bridging in the last year. And what we're trying to do with LayerCake is to provide essentially a way for the risk to the user to be moved away from the user to people who are better able to bear it. So it acts like insurance in that way. And that the reason we think that's important is, firstly, we don't think there are very good technical only solutions to getting rid of the risk. If there were, people would have created them. But we do think that you have to get rid of the risk to the user if you want to scale blockchain in the long term, cross-chain, multi-chain, which is, it is the future. It has to be the future because there can't be one chain that can provide everything for everyone. But the only way it's the future is if we de-risk it for the user. This has been a massive engineering project for us to expand that use.
So we think that the potential long-term future for Flare is as a multi-net ecosystem.
A desirable model for a multi-net ecosystem versus some of the other models that are out there, simply because the state connector provides the blockchain itself what we think is the most robust and the fastest way to understand what has happened on another blockchain.
It has something we call the state connector. The state connector is a deterministic oracle. It's the only oracle in the space that actually has a consensus protocol. So it's a binary forking consensus protocol that uses the network to come to consensus over external data.
And this allows Flare to act as an eye in the sky.
Whereas if you're trying to build bilateral bridges across, say, the top 100 chains, you would need 4,950 bridges to connect them all up. Whereas we can do that just with 100 smart contracts, one smart contract on each chain that can basically, because Flare can observe all the rest of the chains.
So what then is the role of the state connector in all this?
So the state connector essentially enables the insurance to be paid out when there's a malfunction. So the state connector allows Flare to have essentially a view or come to consensus on the state of any chain or in fact any API.
And this allows Flare to act as an eye in the sky.
As Ethereum does move to Ethereum 2, they will probably also upgrade the Ethereum virtual machine to be more efficient, computationally superior, and we would be integrating the new versions of Ethereum virtual machine as it's come along. I actually see a slightly different structure, which I think would be interesting, having lots of different Flare networks all communicating with each other with two-sided state connectors, running different virtual machines. So that would be what I would think would be very interesting. Something like, one Flare network that is running. So this would all be considered Flare, and it would all use the same FLR token. But you could have one network that's maybe running EVM and has a double-sided state connector. So each network has state connector instead of Flare, and it would all use the same FLR token. But you could have one network that's maybe running EVM and has a double-sided state connector. So each network has state connector. And another network that's maybe running Agoric, or another network that's running a WASM type virtual machine, all of which can basically, the state connector can allow each network to come to consensus over what has happened on each other network, and each one's base token, the FLR. This is one of the reasons for Songbird. Rather than swapping out a virtual machine like Ethereum and just getting rid of it, which I think is probably unlikely because I can't see it ever becoming, unsuccessful. But just to simply add in more networks with different virtual machines that maybe offer different capabilities. Rather than fragmenting liquidity, we're unifying it. And that's really very valuable.
And so in a world of proliferating chains, parachains, subnets, sidenets, and supernets, Flare can connect everything.